Bold, a writing discussion helping you write big and bold and beautifully. I'm your host, Kate Ristaw, and as you all know, I've been talking recently about the publishing process and getting published and what went great for me, what went wrong, what I've kind of learned along the way. Um, whichever way you're going. So one of the things that recently came up was somebody was asking me about this particular book, Shadow Girl, and getting to the end of that process because we published book 3, and so the whole book series is out. So it's finally all done. Done. It's like this magical word and a magical world that doesn't usually exist in writing, that we've gotten to the end of a project. So in order to talk about this book, Shadow Girl, I need to first talk about this book, which is also Shadow Girl. So what happened when this book was first published, it actually came out in 2015. So in 2015, Shadow Girl was published by Lichen Press. And so 30 days before it came out, some of y'all know this story, 30 days before it came out, that press, Lichen Press, went under. So suddenly this book, I had ordered copies and I received my author copies and I was ready to go with my bookstore signings and my launch, but I no longer had a publisher. So very suddenly I actually became an indie publisher, and that's how I got to this book, which if you're not watching the video, I'll let you know, it looks pretty much exactly the same. The only substantive difference is instead of it saying Lichen Press inside, it says my publisher inside the book. So I made a small press, I published the book, and they gave me all the rights back, which was really great of them. So we went from, in 30 days, like the press publishing, me becoming an indie publisher, me publishing a book. But that hadn't originally been my plan for this book. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to start looking for another small press, because for me at the time, in 2015, I thought that was like the route that I wanted to take. Since then, as you all know, I've kind of changed my perspective in terms of some books I have are out with small presses, some books I have are indie published, and I think they're both equally great. I also have an agent who's out there trying to get some work traditionally published also. So I did get a publisher for the book, and Shadow Girl got picked up by another press. And so that book ultimately came out, let's see, you can always check the copyright date in case you have no memory of what happened, because I don't know about y'all, but I remember very little of the last few years in particular. So the newest edition came out in 2016, and new cover designed by Lee Moyer, who's one of my favorite artists. So, okay, right? So we're good. We got this book out. Like, everything's going to be great. We're working on book 2, starting to work on another series at the same time. That first book in that series, Clockbreakers, ultimately gets published through the same small press. So it looks like everything's going great. I say looks like because that particular press stopped being able to pay the authors. I phrased that very strangely, didn't I? So they stopped paying us. So that's a problem in publishing, where you're not getting paid for your work. So I started to try to get those rights back in order to publish the book again somewhere else. And at that point, I had gotten to know a couple of different presses and publishers, and I considered whether or not I wanted to bring that book back indie. I ultimately did bring Clockbreakers, that book. I got the rights back from the small press and was able to republish Clockbreakers. And I published that on my own because that was one that I wanted to like work my way through and build up my press. But at the same time, I didn't know everything about press, publishing, indie. I still don't know everything. I think it's impossible to know everything. But one of those things that I really do say to people a lot if they're thinking about being an indie author is just remember that you are running an author business. You're running a book publishing business. So if that's interesting to you, then totally go for it. And it's something I completely love. But I knew at the time, like, I could only really be handling putting out one book first. So then I started to weigh, where do I want to send this book? And at the time, my friend Ben Gorman had opened up Not a Pipe Publishing, and a couple of my friends had started to send their books into him and talk to him about publishing. And so him and I started that discussion. And I want to say right now that where it ultimately ended up was with a really, really great like author-publisher relationship. I didn't know that was going to be the situation at the beginning. I think I was really hesitant, having gone through all of these different experiences of publishing, and so many things kind of going wrong along the way. But ultimately, I think it actually worked out really well. And it wasn't something that I was necessarily expecting to go well. So I'm really happy with where it ended up. So that got us here to the final draft, the final book. And then it ultimately came out through Not a Pipe Publishing. What I've learned throughout this process and what I would like bring back around to everyone else is just kind of being aware of like what path you want to take and what it's going to take to walk that particular path. So being an indie author takes a lot of work, but it also is like incredibly rewarding. And the other thing is also to stand up for your rights as an author. So if you're not getting paid, that's not okay. Like if you're not getting responses or feedback, or if you're getting a lot of empty air, that's not okay too. So a good small press, a good publisher, a good agent are responsive and want to communicate and talk with you and let you know how the project is going. So that's just something I really wanted you all to be aware of as I went through this process from book to book to book, trying to find the right place for this book. When it ultimately ended up with Not a Pipe, I can't imagine a better place for the book to be. So as you yourself work through some of your own writing and figuring out where your story is going to go, keep an eye for who you want to be as an author, where you want to be published, and what really matters to you as an author and also as a person. So just keep in mind, though, that plans change. So sometimes you can have a plan and you can have an idea for where things are going to go, but ultimately, like, you just got to keep at it, keep with it, and especially keep writing. Have a good day.